Hi everyone, Ivana Taylor here. I'm coming to you live today from sunny Dallas. So much fun. And welcome to our Monday Bizapalooza chat where we are plugging into small business issues. We're gonna try to make sense of them, try to simplify them. And the big topic of conversation today is the big customer, the big client. People call them whales, right? Some people love them, some people hate them. Well, we're here to dig in really deep for that. And for that, we are featuring one of our Bizapalooza chat active participants, Andrea Villeneuve. Did I get that right?
Close enough. I'm good with that.
Say it because I have a strange name and I want people to say it. So say your name again.
Okay, it would be Andrea at Villeneuve.
Villeneuve.
Yes.
So French, so hot. So, Andrea, now that we've got you here, talk a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Who I am and what I do. Well, I have been in the web development and hosting industry for 18 years. Prior to that, I was working in startup consulting with businesses, and I still do that on the side. My focus is mostly processes, where a business that is starting up is looking for processes to put in place to ensure that their company is on the ground and running and not falling behind because something's not there. I go in and I do a review and an analysis and let them know what they need to have that going. So that's what I'm doing now.
Wow. So tell me a little bit about how you got interested in that. What is the why behind what you're doing?
The one business, the why, was I just sort of fell into it. And I was going to say I just sort of fell into this one too. I had run into someone who was looking for someone who could speak to them on processes, who had seen me work with some of the startups that I had prior to the business that I have now, and asked if I would be interested in coming in and doing an analysis for them. And that was kind of how it rolled. And it was like, okay, this is a nice fit for me because I can go in, I can give them what they need, and I can get back out again without having to worry about being full-time within an organization.
I got it. So as we were preparing for this chat, and this idea of really big customers, you said you had a lot of experience with that. Talk a little bit about that. I've had a lot of experience with it too. And I find that a lot of companies I've worked with really wanted that big name customer, but when you look behind the scenes a little bit, kind of wasn't all rainbows and unicorns.
I would absolutely agree with that. Having started out when we were back 18 years ago, the big sell was, okay, who are your clients? Who do we know that you can give us a name for so that we can build some trust and some belief in what you're doing? It's a double-edged sword because a big client is wonderful to have, but there are also a few things about it that can make it very, very dangerous, especially in a startup phase. If they are not satisfied and they walk out the door, all of a sudden you're left with what else? So yes, there was a lot of experience at the beginning of when we started. And again, with the clients that I have now, working with a large client is great, but there's an assumption that I'm more of somebody there for them, not for myself. And so for me, thinking of where I'm going and what I'm doing, I kind of like to have a better mix in moving forward, because that keeps, then if I do have to let go of a client, or if they're not happy with the way things are going, I'm still comfortable and I'm not like scrounging for the next one. So it's really important to keep those things in mind.
Well, you said something that I think is really, really critical, and I hope that folks didn't miss it, and that is this idea of having a brand name client gives you some sort of credibility. I'm not going to lie, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Of me changes if I say that I've worked with bigger companies or that I've run influencer campaigns with bigger companies. And at the same, and I've also found that in some elements of business, working with big companies is really, really great. I find in my experience that bigger companies are really appreciative of the work that I do. And of course they pay well and all that kind of stuff. But when I had a manufacturing background, that was not exactly the case. These big companies typically had entire departments of people to do something we might only have one person to do. And their requirements were intense. People were running around quite a bit. And I actually found, Andrea, when I did the numbers, that they weren't that profitable. What's been your experience?
I think that, again, that is something that you really have to evaluate. I mean, it has to be, the right fit. It has to be the right client. And you have to look at it like, if you're not going to make a profit, if the amount of production time and time that you put into it means that you are not making a profit, it's not worth your time or your effort to have a client, despite how big, I mean, I agree, a big name is wonderful. If you are basing it just on the fact that it's a name and you want to use that to leverage other business, that's beautiful. But be very cognizant of what the cost is to you and what it might mean down the road. So you have to keep all of those things in mind when you choose to work with a larger client.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk a little bit maybe about some tips, right? Because you said it has to be a good fit. In your past experience, what were some of the attributes that you were looking at to determine if a client was a good fit?
They had to be willing to understand we're an independent business. I have an independent business. An independent business means I'm not their contractor. I'm not a subcontractor. It means that I am not on call 24/7 for their needs. They cannot treat me like an employee. I'm not their employee. I am outside of the realm of what they're doing. So they have to be able to understand that. And I have had clients where we've had to have that conversation where I'm not available for you. I do have other clients, and you have to be willing to understand that concept. If you want someone outside of that, you might be wanting to look at a full-time employee or a different contractor, because there is different levels of what you can bring in. And so that would be one of the things that I would be looking for, is their grasp of what my job is and my role is coming through the door. Another thing that I would be looking at, I think, would be their idea of what the business can do for them. I really, if this is who I am by definition, and you are not necessarily on the same page, we're going to end up with a mess. We're not going to end up in a situation where we're both helping each other. So when I'm coming through that door, if you don't have a clear outline of what your expectation is, and I don't have a clear outline of what I can bring and what my expectations are, then our communication level is not on the same page, and it's going to make it a more difficult transition. Is it impossible? No, but you have to be really cognizant of what's there.
So maybe a good idea might be for having that conversation up front.
Absolutely.
Right?
Before you even sign the contract, or in the contract, is lovely to outline what the boundaries are and what the expectations are in moving forward, because that's what that kind of document is for, is to give you that schedule and where you're going with it.
So let's talk a little bit about the balance, because you talked about having a balance. I'm a big believer in that, right? Because clients come, clients go, and it may not have anything to do with the quality of your product or service. Some of them move, or like something happens, right? So you talked about having a good mix. Say a little bit more about that. How have you done this in the past with your startups or with other businesses that you've run?
When you look at diversification, there's a lot of different ways that you can look at it. You can look at it overall as the size of your businesses, the different number of businesses that will be that you can work with from large to small. You can look at it over geography. Maybe you would like to choose clients on both coasts so that you have a little bit of movement that way. One of the things that's been done in the past, when our business was starting off, we diversified outside of development into something that offered a constant revenue. So we were looking at both the recurring revenues and then the other input that we got from the larger contract jobs. So having both of those allowed for a diversification. It allows for growth, and it allows for the business to keep moving.
Those are such great points, right? Because I love the tips you've given, because you gave it, it really is a level of segmentation. So you can segment by geography, you can segment by the type of product or service that you offer, you know, different industries perhaps, all these different things. Now, what if you are a startup and you're like, God, I need to have like a big client, a brand name clients? What are some, like, so for example, I noticed a friend of mine, and I notice this with a lot of local marketing people, that they will have, like they'll say, oh, I work with McDonald's, or I work with Harley Davidson or something, but those are companies that have like local decentralized types of purchasing. Talk a little bit about that, because you don't necessarily have to be with the big corporate people.
No, you don't. You can find a brand name that's local. Even government contracts are handed out at a local level as well, and quite often are encouraged to be within a local community. Not always, but sometimes. So you can absolutely take a look at what people are looking for out there and figure out where your fit is in it. And really it is about how you fit into it. Can you provide the service that they're looking for? I know often with a large client, we're looking at it and we're thinking, no, maybe not, because I don't quite have the staff or whatever we might need. The flip side of that is, though, sometimes they don't know what they need until you start talking to them. So don't ever discount what is open and available out there, and have conversations. If you're not networking and talking to them, you will never know what they need or how you might fit in it. So for me, those are the important things. You start heading out there and you start talking to those organizations. I'm never cold called. I have always networked. So
I was going to ask you that, because for someone who's looking for a larger client, and you've been through this process, what are some of your tips, especially if you're a new organization, a new business?
I guess it depends on what your business is and where you're focused. There will be businesses where the cold call is going to work. Absolutely. Get your foot in the door, have a conversation with someone, show them what your product is, let them know how it's better. That is going to be absolutely the way that you're going to go. Other businesses it's a lot more subtle, because they've got people that they work with already. You need that in, and you need a soft in. And so that might mean more networking, more discussing things with people around them, finding the right contact to get your information to, having conversations with other businesses that either work with them or that are in the same industry that you want to work in, and finding out what makes them happy and how you can please a larger client by coming through the door.
So have you ever used social media to snag a big client?
You know what? I'm going to be really honest. I have not used social media to snag a big client yet. There's always the yet in there. I do find a face-to-face is really important for a lot of what I do. That being said, there are a lot of opportunities that exist on social media that might get you the right connection, and you never know what's going to come off of your networking there.
So what do you do? Like, you were telling me that you're in Winnipeg. I mean, how did you meet and make those connections to get those large clients?
Again, networking is huge for me. So chambers of commerce, different events, industry events where I might have an in to talk to somebody. Sometimes it's just going for coffee with the right people who happen to know someone else. So I'm not afraid to put things out there and to be out there if people want to talk to me about what I do or what's going on. Another thing that I do is community involvement, because there is nothing better or bigger than being a part of your community and having people recognize you from outside of where they're expecting to find you. And that is a really great way of getting people's attention.
Super sneaky, delicious tip, right? Now, what are some of the red flags? So we've talked about all the wonderful things, right? All the benefits of having these great big clients, right? You get the name recognition, you get, the cachet, the credibility, you get to make lots of money, and that's all really good. And then we're assuming that this is a great profitable fit for you. Yay, right? But what are some things you should be on the lookout for that might let you know that either you're too heavy with larger clients?
As in that your balance isn't there, that you have too much. You know what? When you look at your revenue stream, if one client, and I know a lot of people talk 80-20, but really if 10% of your revenue is coming from one single client, then you need to make sure that that relationship is strong and solid, because 10% is significant even if you've got other revenue. And if 25% of your revenue is from your top clients, have some really good analysis on that. I think it's really important to keep track of what your top clients are doing and where your revenue stream is from.
Great. So now what are some of the red flags that maybe that relationship, maybe I should ask you a different question. Okay. What are some things that you should do to keep that relationship strong?
Open communication. I mean, really, if you're not communicating, something is going to go wrong somewhere down the line. You have to be very, very communicative with your clients. If this is a client, I would call it an anchor client, or someone that you are relying on due to your revenue stream to have there, you spend your time building that relationship in the best way possible. That's not to the exclusion of your other clients, though, because really every client that walks through the door is important, and every one of them deserves your attention. So if you have a larger client, yes, there is going to be some shift in that balance, but at the same time, focus on the other ones that you have going, and don't rely on just one client. That's done.
That's right. And I think, I don't know what's been your experience, but usually when you're a startup, well, you tell me, you've done, how many startups have you done? You've done a few.
Personally, I've had 4 businesses start up. So, and 3 of them successful. I mean, everybody has one failure in their past, and you have to acknowledge those. But working with other startups, what I found is a reliance. Like, quite often they get that first client through the door. If it's a large client, they sit back and they tend to relax a little bit and not push as hard as they should getting other clients. And again, this goes to you do not know what will happen with that client down the road. If you don't have something to fall back on, you will be in big trouble. So a warning sign is if you are not pushing for those other clients, you might want to reevaluate that relationship. And I think that works both ways. A large business that is treating you like an employee should pay you as an employee. So if this is what you will want, maybe your next step is to actually work out an employment deal, not necessarily a business deal.
That's why I always distinguish between entrepreneurs and small business owners, lifestyle folks, right? Because let's say if you're positioning, it's easy to quote unquote start a business, hang out your shingle, and then go look for clients and do this thing. But I've seen one of a couple things, and I'm not sure that I'm a good example, right? When I think about it, I've seen folks that have had startups and they have lots of small customers first, and then they get a really big one. But then I've seen what you described too, where like you get this like really big one, and it makes it really hard.
It does. It's
for those new customers, because like this customer is taking up all your time and resources, right? What could you do? Like if you've got that situation where someone's taking up a lot of your time and energy, and you want to keep that relationship going, like they're good. It's all good. It's just taking up 24 hours in a day, right? What can someone do to start diversifying their client base without losing the one they have?
Well, I think we talked a little bit about segmenting your market and finding out how you can approach different size businesses or different geography or different types of the product that you offer in order to segment your marketplace. I think that is important. I think the other thing is having boundaries, when the client seems to be the only thing that you are working on, you need to reevaluate and say, okay, what is my position in this? And really, should I be giving them 24/7? Or do we need to have a conversation about how they are taking advantage of my skill set in this position and not giving me like a fair trial in how I should do this. If I'm a business, I need to be going out and earning more business. So they can't hold me 24/7, not without A, a contract, and B, a salary.
How? I've got to ask this question, because if somebody is dealing with this, I can't imagine that they wouldn't want to know this. Have you ever had this conversation with someone before? And what are some things that you might say to them? How would you broach the subject? How would you create this conversation if this is happening to you?
Absolutely. There was a client, a very large client that we have, who was constantly making demands consistently all the time, and then coming back and saying, I don't understand why you're not doing this in this time. So the conversation, and it is a conversation, and it is a very gentle one, is, you are not my only client. I appreciate that you like my work so much that you want me to be there for you, but we have to define what I can give you and what I can't. And so if you want to keep working with me because you like what we're doing, and this is what I can give you, and this is what it works out to. If you want something more one-on-one like that, there has to be a way that you will either pay for it or hire me or create that different environment. If they really want to work with you, they're not going anywhere. So it's just that conversation piece that needs to happen, and defining those boundaries as to what would be acceptable. Not going to turn something over in 24 hours, but I will let you know what the time frame looks like as to when you can expect it. Difficult to give them those boundaries, and most people want them.
Ooh, so what you're saying is that a small business owner should not be afraid to have that courageous conversation.
Absolutely not. No.
Do you respect you more or less after you've had that conversation?
I think the respect is much higher, because what you have said is we are looking at each other mutually as benefiting each other. And in order for it to happen in a way that is good for both of us, there has to be our boundaries. And our boundaries will be something we negotiate together, and it will give you what you want, and it will give me what I want. And I think there's far more respect in that than having somebody who is constantly upset saying, my expectations were, and not getting what they were looking for. So I would rather give you what you need with an answer rather than something up in the air in your expectations.
So this is one of the questions that's come up in the chat, and I think it's really a worthy conversation here on the video, and that is it better? Okay, we know that a balance is nice, right? But are the people who have fewer large clients, are they happier or more successful than the folks who have many small clients? You know, what are your thoughts on that? Which is better?
I don't think you can define better. I think for your business, you will find that there are a range of clients, and you have to find the ones that fit the most. Now, if I referring to like the web development hosting business that I run, we have everything from mom and pop shops right up to government clients. So we run the gamut. Everybody is there. And really for us, it's about finding the ones that work with us in the best fit. And I'm not going to go looking necessarily for smaller ones or larger ones. It's just the right client for what we offer and what we want to do with them. It's not always right. Sometimes
you have to know exactly what a good fit is. So like, okay, this is a stupid example, but it's so mundane that folks will get it. And that is, do you prefer phone calls, emails, or face-to-face? Like, that is a huge determinant of how much I like working with you. Because
absolutely.
If you have someone that wants to spend an hour on the phone with you every single day, but you prefer email, or your systems run better through email, that's going to be a problem.
Agreed.
Right?
Yep.
So I can see like the way someone wants to communicate and how they want to interact with you. I can see that being a valuable criteria for what's a good fit. What are some other things on that list?
Well, I think that would be one of the main ones that we tend to have on ours. I would say a bunch of our clients are what we call a set and forget. They want the service, and as long as the service is working, they're not ever going to contact us again, except to pay their bill, which is great, because it gives you an opportunity to build some of those smaller, consistent clients. Mm-hmm. There are other clients that we have, and their method or their preference is by telephone. They like phone meetings, or they like in-person meetings. It doesn't always have to be in person, but given it's a tech industry kind of thing, I find I actually don't do a lot of face-to-face other than initial meetings with the clients. Once things are starting to roll, they're quite comfortable having, as long as there's a way of communicating. Beyond communication, when you're looking for a right fit client, you're also going to take into account things like where their growth patterns are, where your growth patterns are. Are they going to be
about that? What do you mean by growth pattern?
Well, we've started with a lot of clients, or I've had a lot of clients who have grown beyond what we offer, or who are looking for something beyond what we offer. And I am the first one to recommend somebody else outside of us for them, if that's where their needs are. As have had clients come in who have said, this is what I want, and looked at it and said, I'm sorry, I'm not the right person for this. I'm not the right business for this. But I would be more than happy to send you in another direction for someone who can do that. And sometimes that's just good business building, right? Because you're not the right fit for someone. It's okay to not be the right fit for everyone. It's okay to look at a client and say, I don't think I'm comfortable with how our relationship is going to grow. And so if that's the case, by all means, it's okay to say no. And it's okay to find somebody else.
A smart move. And I think, like you were saying, so that is such a cool one, right? Growth patterns, right? Because if someone, if like using your web hosting example, it's one thing if you're a startup, you've got this little tiny website, you can do shared hosting. It's very simple. You send a newsletter, whatever. It's, not really taxing, as opposed to now you have room to grow. As opposed to someone who may be already pretty big and getting bigger.
Right. And who you may not be able to satisfy their needs. And that is something you have to look at. Can you fit the bill? I know everyone always says, yes, I can, I will make it work, but that's not always the case, especially if you're a startup or if you are a smaller business. So you have to really look at what the goals are and where they're going to go with it. Are they going to grow beyond your capabilities? And what's your plan for them after that? Are you going to expand with them? How do you handle what that looks like?
I think that's so smart, Andrea, so smart, because I've had experiences with folks who like, I can do that. And yet it's not their strength. They do it. But it actually, to be honest with you, I'm going to say I've had an experience recently where someone, they can do it, but it actually ended up costing me more money. I wasn't really satisfied, and it wasn't their strength. So as usual, I'm always telling small businesses, don't be afraid to choose your strength and double down. It's
absolutely
say no. Right?
Yeah, no. You're right on the button with that. That is, I look at it this way. There's a lot of people, especially if you talk web development and marketing and that kind of branding, there's a lot of people who do what I do. However, not everyone's going to be the right fit for everyone else. And I would rather run like a co-opetition type like effort where I am recommending to my competitors people who are a better fit for them. And it allows everyone to grow that way. And then the client who's not coming to you and saying, I'm so unhappy, they're going, thank you. Even though we're not doing business, maybe there's something else that can be passed on to you down the road. Or, I can recommend someone else to you who might be better. It's always looking to which client will be the best fit for you.
Yeah, so fit. And I think we're really starting to, I think folks will get so much out of this, right? So we talked about fit in terms of what are your systems like and how do you like to do work, right? Do you have a 24-hour turnaround, 48-hour turnaround? Do you like to communicate face-to-face versus email? Those are like really, really, it's almost like building a relationship, right?
It is.
Right? Like
it is.
Or sushi, they're not the same. Right? So I think that's fantastic. And I love this growth attribute, right? Like making sure that they're growing where you're going. And I guess the other one that I'm talking about, I don't know if that fits into the systems thing, but this last thing we talked about, which is, you know, do the things you do well.
Absolutely.
Right. And refer out. There's nothing wrong with that. Right?
Very much so.
Anything
Very much
else on that list? Or is that covers like 90% of the big ones?
We've covered a lot of the different, I mean, it really, for me, when you are looking at large client versus small client, advantage versus disadvantage, I mean, I look at fit, I look at communication, I look at growth, and I look at, nope, those would be the three. Never mind. We'll just stick to the three. Those are the three things.
Three is good, right?
Yep.
And, you know, I think what people forget are the costs that are associated with those, whether it's all those three attributes, right?
Yep.
Communication. If somebody wants to have a face-to-face meeting and they're on the West Coast and you're on the East Coast and they want to see you every week, this is going to be a challenge. It's going to cost money, right? Yeah. So you have to consider all of those things and be okay with it, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
You know, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I feel like I'm gonna.
Well, anyways, I know.
On the spot, what were some of the mistakes that you made and what did you learn from them as you were trying to navigate this large client, small client circumstance in your businesses?
Some of the, yeah, you have put me on the spot. Okay. Some of what we've gone through, some of it, believe it or not, is firing the small clients, not the large ones. And recognizing when a small client is actually more work than your large client is, and what that actually looks like. And it's because often you think, well, they're a small client, so how big a deal are they really? But surprisingly enough, you can have some of those smaller clients who are very, very work heavy, and clients like that, you have to look at, again, what is the profit? Is it worthwhile for you to maintain them as a client? Dealing with some of the larger clients, I mean, we've had definitely examples where they've outgrown us, where they have, and we weren't prepared for that next step. It wasn't that we didn't have other clients, but when you have that ratio that isn't healthy and they've outgrown you, it becomes very, okay, what do we do now? How do we fill that gap? What are we going to do to make that look right? How do we cut back? Do we fire? Do we make choices that are going to definitely affect how our business operates? So that is definitely part of something that you pay a lot of attention to. That's why I do look at the growth, what they're doing and what we're doing, because there will be a time when they're probably going to outgrow you. And if not,
thing, right? So I think as I'm listening to you talk, I feel like there's these things we say to ourselves that aren't always true. Like we say to ourselves, having a big client's better because then people know who they are and that builds your credibility. That may or may not be true, right?
That is correct.
A small client is easier than a big client. Not necessarily true.
No.
Right? These simplifications that we've made are sort of myths and fallacies.
It's all about relationship building. And not every relationship is going to work in your life, personally or professionally. We all know that. We've had our share of relationships that have gone sideways. If you simplify it, I think you're doing yourself a great injustice. I think that you are looking at it through a lens that's going to have you miss something that would be really important. So always be paying attention to, and again, reiterating, every client is important, small or large, and that's how you would know if that small one was more of a hindrance to your business growth than a help. So you have to be paying attention to those.
So I think one of the things that, we've talked about working with difficult clients, whether they're small or they're large. And I think I had a question and it just flitted right out of my head. That's terrible. It's like,
oh dear.
It's so gone. And we talked about risks. I don't know, what is it that is a conversation, Andrea, that small business owners aren't having about their customer mix? Like that they really should be looking at?
Again, it's defined by what you're selling. Mm-hmm. Like, are you product, are you service, what is going on, and what that mix might look like for you. I think every business is going to be a little different, going to have a little different need, going to want a little different market. And there's nothing wrong. Actually, I highly recommend having an idea of all of those things. What is your ideal client before you even walk out the door? Because that really helps you in creating that, the goal of getting the right people into your mix.
It's defining that ideal client where I think people get kind of mixed up. And so that's why I really encourage everyone to listen to what Andrea is saying, right? Because we think like we'll say an ideal client is a business in a particular area that is such and such a size, that has, that needs this, that, or the other thing. And again, if you really focus on what we were talking about, which is communication, growth patterns, and something else. There was one more. I can't remember what that was now. I'll have to look back. But if you focus on those key things, then you're liable to find ideal clients who maybe make decisions a certain way, or who, I don't know. It's like, for example, when I look at my marketing consulting business, one of the things I've learned, like mistakes I've made, right, is a lot of small business owners will think that they have to have, they got to do all this marketing stuff so that they can like make money, so that they can hire more people, or whatever this little logic path is. But what I find is that if your operations isn't in order and you can't handle the marketing strategies that you're putting in, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
It's going to be virtually impossible to run the marketing you want to run if you're like busy over here trying to service the clients you have, and so on and so forth. It's just really, really distracting, right? That makes it really tough. So I can see that definitely people have to pay attention to those things. Let me look and see what is going on here. I'm looking over at the Twitter stream. I like what Tim Berry says. He says, how do you know, question 5, how do you know that you're too dependent on one client? And he says, stress, lack of sleep, fear if it becomes about the relationship instead of the deliverables, right? So, there's just over dependence.
Yes. Right? Yeah. Yeah, that is very true. It's one of the ways that you can tell that there's something unequal in your balance. It depends on the amount of stress that you are going through in dealing with the client. I would say that is very part of it. I'm just taking a look as well. Mostly because I have to go back to the question too.
Oh yeah, no worries. One of the other things I go ahead.
Too much focus. Okay, so too much focus on one client. Yes, if you are stressed in dealing with that one client, if all of your other clients are put to the side, if it seems like you are spending, 80% of your time with one, 20% with the other ones. I love those 80-20 rules, so they're not always 100% accurate, but you have to pay attention to what is happening there. The flip side of that, I'm going to dive into the whole having one large client that can do amazing things. When we started in the web development industry, we started off okay because it was the thing at the time, the Canadian pharmacists who were selling drugs to the States. And all of the pharmacists wanted websites, but getting one large client was the rolling into all of the other business. So sometimes you have to look at what that client has to offer and how much you're willing to give them in order to get the further business from it as well. So, it's always an evaluation game. It's always reassessing where something is with the client. And I would say that one client, we were probably together for about 10 years before they actually left. And they outgrew what we needed. Well, it wasn't even outgrowing. They ended up in the States. And so somebody else bought the company and wanted someone else in charge. And so you transition them and away they go kind of thing. That's one of the things that changes. But again, that large client, even though they might be a little stressful at first, can be the key to a lot of other business if you want to focus on them.
Awesome, right? Let's talk about that, because you've really hit on something, right? Because sometimes we're back to that credibility thing. When people see that you have had some large clients,
yep.
What are some ways that you can use your experience with large clients to attract a mix of clients? Have you done that before? Absolutely,
because a big name can open doors for you. It does give you that, as we've talked about, some sort of credibility. Sometimes people get a little leery too, though. If you're dealing with big clients, really, why do you want me? Because I'm not them. And it's perfectly fair to say, this is what their needs are, and your needs are similar, and I have space for both of you in the realm of what I do. And so, yes, using that larger name comes in really handy. We always love the whole name drop thing, right? But boom, there goes another one. But we do use them when it comes to our advantage, right? So when we talk and somebody says, oh, but I've done stuff for Coke. And honestly, the amount of work that they may have done might be very minuscule, and it might have been through another organization. However, they did work for Coke, and it sort of says something to people, right? So yes, people are going to use that to their advantage. What I like to use a large business for is I can meet their capabilities. So why wouldn't I be able to meet yours? And you're a lot. If I am doing work for a large business, it says that I have the capabilities and the skill set that they need coming through the door. And that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate the smaller clients, and I can do the work for the smaller clients. So if they're looking at me, you should look at me too.
Yeah, absolutely. That is perfect. You have given us some awesome selling points. I wanna like jump away from the large client, small client.
Sure.
Just a little bit. I'm really intrigued by this startup stuff that you've done. How did you get started in this? What inspired you to start your first business? How did that work for you?
Well, okay, so way back, family. So I come from a family that have always started a business or run a business or done something. And I think my first kick at the can, I was maybe 20. And yeah, I kind of, this is what I want to do. And I did all of the wrong things, put myself in debt, created an environment that I mean, I didn't know what I was doing then. I really didn't, but I wanted to do it. So I did. I learned. After that, the consulting business tended to be where I found some grounding. I was really good at a lot of things in the consulting industry. And I ended up working for an organization that helped people start their own business through the government when they had lost their jobs. And so when I was working for them, I got a really good handle on what a startup was like and what you needed to get. And talking to them and helping them through what they were doing gave me the ability to see, here are the things that you need. and you go from there. So I ran a consulting service, and I was working through that, and then the web development company started, and then my new consulting service. And I've got a couple of other things on the back burner that, you know, it's like they're going to happen. It's just a question of when I get around to them.
I was going to say, so what does your business do right now? Where you're spending all of your time?
I split my time between the consulting, building the consulting service right now, and the web development. So between the two of them, I am, those are my two business focuses. I'm a volunteer person as well. So I've chaired a few organizations and, you know, done a few things in my community that I think are really important. So that's how I make my contacts and build as well. And I find that that's something that works really well for me too.
So in other words, it's kind of really interesting because earlier in the conversation, you said it's really important to be active in your community, and you've done some of these different things, and you've been entrepreneurial for so long. Do you feel that knowing you in that way has really worked to your advantage, no matter what, like if you decided to start some totally unrelated business,
it's very helpful. It allows me to see where pitfalls are in doing something. Can I do something like way off base? Absolutely. I have plans for stuff that's way off base, because, you know, a good idea is a good idea. It's just got to find its time in the market. So some of what I'm working on is, hey, we're not ready for this yet, but it'll happen kind of thing. But yes, I think an entrepreneurial skill set, will also help you get a really good job if you've got one too, because you have an ability to see that people like you to notice and to be paying attention to. So, but yeah, in a short answer, yes, I think you could throw anything at me, and if I can create a plan around it and build it, I would likely be able to get it off the ground.
So what is it that gets you like stuck? You know, what is it that often has you feeling stuck, and then how do you get yourself unstuck?
You know, when things slow down, when you don't quite have a clear path to where you know your goal should be, yeah, that's kind of stuck. I try not to let things get me stuck for too often. There's either a way over, around, or through. It just depends on how you want to go to task on what you need to do. But when you get stuck, it's really good to stop, reevaluate, take a look at it again, figure out why, because there's always a why, and then what will it take to fix that and get over it and keep going.
So do you find that like doing something completely different, or running away, or like doing what is your reset?
I tend to do very artsy things.
Like you go from web development, which is very technical, to sort of a completely right brain thing. And I think that's important to take some time away, even inside the conversation that we've been having with large clients, because I think our emotions get pretty wrapped up in the whole thing.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, and you get wrapped up in your business too, which is another lesson that's very hard to learn, is that sometimes you have to let those businesses go because they are not good for you, or they're not doing what they should do, or they need a complete overhaul. Don't be so invested. And often I compare building a business to raising a child. It's almost the same thing, but you have to let your children go. Sometimes you can let your business go too.
And sometimes you have to let your customers go.
Yes.
That
is.
I've had some conversation with some entrepreneurial friends, and they had the client from hell, right? Great money, but they were just really, really difficult to work with. So folks get stuck behind, like, I really want the money. And there's this whole conversation here. Tim Berry mentioned that he had a client literally buy up an entire year of his, as long as he did not work for a competitor.
Wow.
Right? It was like, wow. I'm going to find this tweet. I'll see if I can find it exactly. Once a big client offered to buy all of my hours for the next year if I promised not to work for competitors. I said yes. And ultimately he said it was something he could not refuse. you know, and we Dustin Luther from Dun & Bradstreet, he said he had something similar, except that the client said he had to close his shop and work full time. And I have seen this happen over and over again. So now I want to ask Dustin, so did you do it? Were you happier? I'm kind of curious what he thinks about that, because I think that's fascinating. I've had such bad experiences with jobs and things that just take over your life, that like when I couldn't believe that Tim did it, because I would be so afraid, like all the things that I experienced and all this stuff. He's Tim Berry, for crying out loud. I can't say I've ever had that. I've had folks ask, and I have refused because I was too scared.
I'm sort of torn. Couple different directions on this one. If you are an independent contractor, or if you work as an independent contractor and they are willing to buy that time and give you, the only question that I ask out of that is, why would they pay for a contract and not hire you? And are they just bypassing paying all of the payroll deductions and everything else that goes with it? I mean, perfectly acceptable if that's what you want and that's what they are looking for. I think that that's great if you can make that work. I know that if I took a year off of my business to work with a sole client, I probably wouldn't have much of a business at the end of it to try and build up again.
See, it worked out for him. He said, yeah, yes. It led to 7 more years of consistent repeat, but not exclusive business, and it worked out great. And that's the thing for Tim Berry. I mean, you've got to really, really know yourself. I think that's the big thing I'm getting out of this conversation. You've got to really know yourself, know what level of risk you can tolerate, know how you work, know who your customer is. I mean, what is it that you know for sure about big clients versus small clients?
I would tell you, I don't know anything for sure, because every circumstance is going to be different. And I won't know for sure until I'm in the circumstance. I mean, again, you know, we're looking at, does it fit? Where's the growth? How is the communication?
The relationship. Yep.
Yeah. So here's the relationship. Is it going to change everything for you? Is it going to change nothing for you? Where are you in your business growth that it allows for that kind of communication and that kind of movement? It's really, yes, knowing you, knowing what you want, knowing where you're going to go. If you don't know those 3 things, you might be making the wrong choice. Always have a way of ensuring that you know, if you're walking into a full-time 1 year, that there's a back out if it needs to happen. If it's going to affect you badly and the other business growth that you're going to have, yes, by all means, make sure that there's a way of protecting yourself. I mean, that's always part of it too.
And I love the thing that you brought up earlier about having these courageous conversations, right? So it's knowing yourself, knowing your business. It's some really, really meaty nuggets out of this conversation, because, you know, there's the knowing yourself, there's the knowing what fits, right? Yeah. And then there's, you know, having the courage to stand for that, to know what your boundaries are and know what and have that conversation. You know, are there any, okay, I don't even know if this is even an applicable question, but just based on your experience, I don't work with too many like really ginormous companies. I really don't. So my question for you is, with all of your experience, is there a certain temperament, or is there a certain profile of an entrepreneur that, you know, what are some characteristics to know that you should be getting more larger types of whale customers?
And yeah, no, I think we're going to go back to what are you selling? Where does it fit in what they need? Yeah. How are you growing with it's all the same.
It always keeps coming back to those same things. It doesn't have so much to do with like, you should have at least like a team of 5 and have a risk tolerance and maybe so much in the bank or like something like that.
I don't think you can define that, because it really does depend more on what you're outputting and how you can manage this scenario. And I mean, we've been through a couple of large companies who moved on to, like, again, quite often they relocate because somebody buys them out, or a new partner takes a look at what they're doing, or they move beyond what the scope is that we can give. But they started small too. Or they started large and we had exactly what they needed to get them to the next level. And it's okay to have that too.
I think that's really fantastic. I think I got like, don't be afraid of going for the large customer,
Nope.
right? And
Yep.
But I would also say that one of the critical success factors is you gotta know the numbers of your business.
Absolutely.
And I don't see too many small business owners who know the numbers of their business. They just go after something. And I think you got to know, like, how much does it cost me to do the service? How much time do I spend? And I think a lot of the things that we talked about that were critical, whether it's communication, growth, and relationship building, those have soft costs involved.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. You always have to.
Right.
Again, when I work with startups on processes, a lot of what we do is, are you priced right? And are you taking all things into consideration, right? Because you look at it and you go, well, I think it's worth this. And I'll look at, okay, but have you included your time? You know, are you thinking of that at all? Or are you just, well, it's my business, so I have to put my time into it? No, you have to do your price level based on your time into it too. As you said, the soft costs. There are a lot of soft costs involved.
And I think, like, so for example, even, you know, producing a Bizapalooza chat, producing a tweet chat, it has costs involved. And then at the same time, those products or services that you're offering also have a value out there that your customer is willing to pay.
Yes.
Now, if your costs leave a smaller margin than you need or want, now you've got to look at improving your processes, improving your margins, you know, becoming more efficient. And I think folks have that backwards. I think they go out and get certain customers. I don't know. I think I got religion. Tim, if you're listening, I got religion, right? I you know, once I discovered what things were costing me, I was like a new woman. And I felt a lot more confident with my pricing.
Yep.
And which customers I was going to go after and who would value this.
Yep.
Nice, right.
I agree. I think that's knowing you. So, you know what, your business and what you know goes into it, and, you know, producing something like this, or that you know what benefit comes from it. You also know what the cost is to you. This is what, 2 hours, 3 hours of your time. What is that worth? And is what you're getting from that worth more, equal or more to what you are into it? And when you start evaluating that, you get a really good grasp of where you should be in the market and what you should be asking for and what kind of clients you need to come through your door.
All great advice, Andrea. And I think this is just a perfect place to wind down this video portion of our Bizapalooza chat. If you're considering big customers, small customers, whether you should have more or less, good or bad, hire or fire, this is the video for you. So thank you for being here with us, Bizapalooza chat, plugging into Monday, and with our special guest, Andrea. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was lots of fun.
Awesome.